And we are live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris, and this is my channel, Bar911970. And as always, I want to take the time to thank you for listening to what I have to say, hearing my point of view, and hopefully helping you to think on a deeper level about things, topics, situations that are happening in this world. So if you haven't checked any of my videos out before, please do. I welcome anyone with an open mind and people who want to try and think on a deeper level. So welcome. Today is the 28th of November, 2017. It is currently 3:35 p.m. And I want to talk about an incident that I see a lot of people are posting about these days. And that is the calling of, her name is Elizabeth Warren, who is called Pocahontas by Donald Trump, and people are outraged, calling this a racist statement and things like that. So I just want to first off saying, my opinion on bullying is always wrong, hurting people is wrong, but we also have to find a fine line, and this is where we need to be careful. So we have to, like if you've ever seen in any of my videos, I always talk about we have to first eliminate the emotion and think of things logically, and not only think in the moment, but what can happen from an event. And if we know anything about recent history, or basically history in itself, governments love to have people fighting amongst themselves so they can do more things that will restrict you, keep you in fear, and keep you under control. Now, the first thing I want to start out with is logically, because there are people getting very offended by this. Now, there are some hypocrisies here. Now, Pocahontas is not a racial slur. It's a name of a person. And as you could see, there was actually a Native American, or you can call her an indigenous member of what was eventually called the Americas. It was a real person. Her name was Pocahontas. Now, if you've ever seen somebody do something silly or dumb, and you said, "Good job, Einstein," I mean, how many people were offended by that? Or if somebody betrayed you, you'd call them a Benedict Arnold. These are just things that people do over time. Now, there are some very mean people out there. There are some people that do things to hurt people. But there are also people, especially these days, where people overreact to things. And I want to show you how that could be something that could be very dangerous down the line. And people do not see the consequences of what they sometimes ask for. And that's why there's an old expression that says, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. Now, there are people nowadays that want to really fly off the handle over anything that's said. And there's a lot of hypocrisy in this world these days. Now, I would never promote to anybody going around and trying to insult people and hurt people. But in the end, they are just names. Now, on my channel, on both channels, I've been called every name in the book. I've been insulted. I've been attacked. I've had death threats. Now, would I want these things? Of course not. But people do have the right to express themselves, even if it hurts somebody's feelings. And that's the biggest thing these days, is people are worried about hurting of feelings. Now, I can understand. Nobody wants their feelings hurt. So, I mean, being a person that was picked on as a child, I can understand that. But the dangerous part that we have to really be aware of is where do we draw the line to what's offensive and what cannot be said? Because eventually what will happen, if people get so overly offensive of every word that's being said, eventually people start to fight. And then bad situations start to happen. Maybe crimes are involved, or people hurting each other on a physical level. And then what happens? Governments come in and they start creating laws which restrict your freedoms. Now, where do we draw the line? Because what word could not be taken out of context and not be used in a nasty way? I mean, you could call, "Oh, you're just being silly." Well, what if somebody says, "Well, that demeans me. I don't like that. It hurts my feelings. That should be banned." Eventually, we could come down to the point where so many laws are created, we're not allowed to say anything because we're afraid that we might offend somebody. And, sometimes people offend people even not trying to do so. And if you know anything about the ruling class throughout society and throughout history, is they love looking like the good guys and the good girls. And they love it that we fight amongst ourselves, and they come in and quote-unquote save the day by saying, oh, we're going to protect you because you need to be protected from harm. So we're going to create more and more restrictive laws that are just there to save you, when they're really there to restrict you. Now, I can understand, like, politicians like Elizabeth Warren. She's going to sit there and say that she's so offended that she was called Pocahontas because it insults a culture, according to her. Well, where's her outrage of the fact that her government is responsible for the genocide of the majority of those indigenous people? What about all the treaties that we signed with Native Americans, and we dishonored them and murdered them by the millions? Where's her outrage for that? People are going to be offended by everything. There are people who are offended by somebody wishing them a Merry Christmas. I've seen feminist videos where a woman was offended that somebody complimented them. So should compliments be outlawed? Should words in general be outlawed and restricted? Because anything can be taken as insulting. What if somebody says, because, let's say, Uber drivers are famous for being bad drivers, and you're driving down the street and you bump over something or drive erratically, and somebody says, oh, look, you're being an Uber driver, and they use it in a way that insults you. Well, should you be offended to the point where that person is not allowed to make that statement? And that's the thing we need to be very careful about. Because if we are all, as a society, going to be offended by everything that's said, because, I mean, here's the thing about Donald Trump and the things he says. I can guarantee you when he said, oh, she's just being a Pocahontas, or however he said it, I seriously doubt he said, you know what, I think I'm going to insult the entire Indian race, or Native American Indian race, because I hate them. I seriously doubt that was on his mind. It was somebody, like I said earlier, if you do something stupid, somebody will say, good job, Einstein. Well, how come nobody protests that word? Or if somebody's a traitor, like I said before, somebody says, oh, you're a Benedict Arnold. Where's the outrage for that? So if Elizabeth Warren wants to be insulted about anything that has to do with the Native Americans or the indigenous people, because that's truly what they were, well, why are we glorifying and teaching in school that Columbus was, there to find another route to India when he was actually coming here by the payment of the Spanish Armada through the Spanish Queen to create genocide? How come she's not outraged about the way these public schools are giving misinformation? And again, look what our government did to Native Americans, how we almost completely wiped them off the planet and gave them the poorest lands, calling them reservations, where there was no food, there was no place to survive, and they were hunted down like animals. Where's her outrage for that? And here's the thing that people say all the time. Oh, well, that was a long time ago. Well, wasn't slavery a long time ago? And yet people to this day still say, like, for example, if you're white, then you automatically are racist and you have to pay reprimands because of something that happened a long time ago. But if you mention the government slaughtering American Indians, that same group will say, well, we can't really discuss that because that was a long time ago. And do you see the hypocrisy? It's almost like people with religion. People will believe in whatever God they want to believe in, even though they've never seen that God. But they will never believe in aliens for the reason that they've never seen an alien. You see how the hypocrisy is growing? And people are becoming so overly sensitive that any word will make them want to ban words. Now, like I've said, I've been insulted by people on this channel for years. I've had people say the nastiest things. I've had people on my comic book channel make accusations about me with no proof that people wanted to believe in. And yes, I was hurt. Yes, I was even offended. But I would never try and do something that would restrict them from being able to say their right to say what they want. If somebody calls you a jerk, that's not nice. But they're allowed to have the freedom because it's basically their opinion. And this is where we need to be careful, because people are going to get what they're hoping for, and that's restriction. So eventually, enough people, when they're outraged, and they all like to just join a bandwagon because it makes them feel like they're actually doing something. Let's say the government steps in and says, you know what? Anybody that says the word Pocahontas is considered a racist, that's considered a hate crime, and you can go to jail for it. Well, what about the next name calling? What about somebody calling somebody an Uncle Tom? What if somebody just says, oh, you're being stupid? Well, isn't that an insult on somebody that may be less intelligent than you? Or somebody that may be, as they say, mentally challenged? What if you say, that's a tall order to follow, and somebody has maybe a gigantic disease, the gigantics, what is it called, gigantus. They are offended because you're insulting higher people of height extreme. And they want to ban that. And you can't say the word black or white anymore because it's offensive. See, as silly as it sounds, this is the route that we're headed towards, because people are getting offended by every little thing, and they can take it so out of context. Because I can pretty much guarantee you that when Donald Trump said it, and it is kind of a stupid thing for him to say, but that's what it boils down to. It was a stupid thing to say. He didn't say it in a way that was trying to be racist. Because I guarantee you there are many hypocrites out there that have called somebody an Einstein as a way to insult them. Or saw somebody doing something saying, oh, that's gay. I mean, even people today, and I've seen this even in the feminist movement, how ridiculous they can be. Because how many movies have you seen where even a girl will say, if a guy's doing something wimpy, they call him a pussycat. And I'm saying that word because I don't want to use the full word. So cut part of it in half. And they'll say all the time, if a man's doing something that's kind of feminine or wimpy, they call him the P word. So shouldn't that be banned? Shouldn't you not be able to say that word? Because isn't that insulting people? So what I'm trying to do is make people understand that if we head down this road, and remember, a lot of times, like they say, drowning in good intention, we are going to have it eventually where so many people will be outraged, so many people will be dividing and hating one another and fighting with each other, that the governments will always come in and be the superheroes with the cape saying, I'll save the day, and create laws that restrict your freedoms. And one day it will come down to the point where it affects you. And that's the problem this day and age. Because I've been doing videos like this and talking about situations like this since 2011. I shut down my original channel because of the harassment that I was getting. And I didn't know better back then like I know now. But it wasn't very popular back then. Excuse me. The whole fake news thing was not popular. It wasn't mainstream, and I was talking about it for years. Many people were. And now a lot of things that a lot of us have warned about years ago are coming true because we see the road further than what's in front of us. If we're going to care about Native American Indians, we should care about how they were slaughtered by the millions. And how Christopher Columbus came not to the United States, never even set foot on American soil, was there to help slaughter the indigenous people because they were thinking in old ways. You can't control people if they live off the land. They need people to have governments to take care of them. They need to be afraid. They need to be protected. And look how much of your freedoms are being taken away from you under your feet, and you don't even think about it, because they do it little bits at a time. And this is what we need to be careful about, because Elizabeth Warren isn't standing up for the indigenous people who were slaughtered. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about in World War II how they created internment camps for anyone that was of Japanese descent, even if they were born in the United States of America. There are a lot of things that are very hypocritical. And yes, we can always point out one thing here and there, and you can always take things out of context. So Trump is calling Elizabeth Warren a Pocahontas was a stupid thing to say. But was he being racist? Was he saying, I wanted to insult the entire American Indian population by saying that word? Or was he just trying to say something kind of stupid? But the people that are outraged and saying this is a racial thing is taking it to a level that it was not intended. Now, do I know that for a fact? Obviously, I can't say that because I'm not Donald Trump. I don't know his intentions. But I would like to think he's a little bit better than what some people try and make him out to be. And I'm not saying he's a saint, because anybody that works for politicians and anybody that works for government has to sell part, if not all, of their soul to do so. So make no mistake, there is not one politician I would want to trade places with. But they are all hypocrites, and they all profit off of us, sitting there, causing the problems, watching us react and hurt each other instead of thinking about the consequences, and then coming in like the very saviors that we all tend to applaud and wave our flags for. And this has happened for centuries, not months, not years, not decades. People need to reverse the path that they're headed down. Because, mark my words, it may not be this generation, may not be the next generation, but if we keep going down this road, eventually people are going to look back at this part of history and wonder why we all gave up the freedoms that we took for granted. Where one day people will be outlawed to say anything, and you'll be restricted where you can go, all for your protection. And if you haven't seen the movie 1984, please watch it, because that's becoming a documentary. And even them, they sit there and applaud their masters, even if they're tortured. And it sounds silly, but look at freedoms from just 100 years ago that people had till today. Look 150 years ago. Look at, geez, just look 70 years ago, 50 years ago. All the freedoms we had. Did you know before the Federal Reserve opened in 1913, people took home 100% of their income? The government did not take a percentage of what you earned, or shall I say steal? But yet we're so used to it now that we just think, oh, that's our duty. We're supposed to give them a piece of what we do. And if you don't, they steal it from you anyway. Or they can throw you in their jails where they have free slave labor. Because if you actually read the 13th Amendment, instead of what the schools educate you in by telling you it abolished slavery, all the 13th Amendment did was legalize the definition of the word slavery to include involuntary servitude, but the 13th Amendment doesn't even qualify if you've been in prison. So if you're placed in prison, you're actually a legal slave. And people don't understand legal definitions, because how many videos out there, oh, sovereign citizen gets overruled in court. Well, if you call yourself a sovereign citizen, you might as well just say I'm a free slave, because you don't understand or understand the legal definitions. And they don't teach you them because they don't want you to know them. Because the smarter you are, the less dependent you are on those who can profit off of your ignorance or your fear. So if people want to fight amongst themselves and turn these little things into bigger things than they are, all you're doing is creating more hatred. All you're doing is creating more division. All you are creating is more distance between us. Because we're not black, we're not white, we're not gay, we're not straight, we're not Republican, we're not Democrat, we're humans. When did we forget this? Governments can send people to their deaths to murder other people so they can acquire the possessions by stealing them from other people. And no government officials all up in arms about that. But say the word Pocahontas and all you know what hits the fan. And again, I'm not saying if somebody's intent was to say it in a cruel way, yes, that just means the person is cruel. So if Donald Trump even meant it as an insult to all Native American people, then that makes him a rotten person. But he still has the right to say it. Be careful what you wish for, you may get it. So if all these overly sensitive people are going to want to be offended by every single word, then eventually every single word is going to offend somebody enough to where nothing will be able to be said. And most people will not realize this, because you need real eyes to realize. Most people won't realize this until it's too late and there's nothing you can do about it. And then people will always just comply. It's time people start thinking deeper, start thinking further down the road. Stop thinking always with your emotion and start thinking logically and actually process the consequences for the actions instead of just saying, I feel hurt, take care of my wound now. People do not realize their own hypocrisy. Somebody made a statement on Facebook, and I'm not going to mention their name, but they're saying, if you're white, you can't say the word Pocahontas because it's racist. And they do not understand that that in itself is a racist statement, because it is saying only white people can't say the word Pocahontas because of your race, your color. And just imagine if it was any other color filled into that blank, how people would be outraged. The idea is to turn this into a little bit of a silly thing, because if we keep taking things this seriously, it's just going to prove over and over again to governments throughout history why divide and conquer works so well and so often. No matter how quote-unquote intelligent or intellectual or civilized or sophisticated we supposedly are. If the world is going to make you think that everybody's just going to get along and love everybody and we're going to hug and everything's wonderful, you're crazy. People are allowed to hate. They're just not allowed to steal from them or hurt them for it. I don't have to agree with everybody's lifestyle. I don't even have to like it, but I have no right to stop them from having it. And if people think we could just silence people and then all of a sudden everything's going to turn into lollipops and rainbows, they're kidding themselves. It's a very dangerous path and a very slippery slope we are headed on right now. But we're not there yet, so we can change it. But sadly, videos like mine will hardly ever be heard. The ones that are outraged by the name, calling white people racists, or saying white males, or whatever, the videos that are going to create more hate and more anger and more division, they're the ones that are going to be seen. That's happening for a reason. There's a purpose behind that. Because if they can get you to not think logically and just think with your emotions, then you're going to hate your fellow neighbor, your fellow human being. And then because you're going to feel so empowered and so emasculated that you need somebody to come in and protect you, and who's going to do that? Well, the all-powerful and mighty caring governments. They're always there to put their arms around you and tell you how much they care, as their arm is reaching into your pocket and stealing your money and handcuffing you behind your back to steal your freedom, all with a smile on their face. If people do not wake up from the reality that they're deciding to head down, one day they're going to wake up and realize everything that they took for granted is now gone, and you will never get this back. And that's why most people don't want to listen to people like me. You may hate me. You may be sitting there rolling your eyes. You may be just here saying, I can't wait to thumb down this video. Well, insult me all you want. Thumb my videos down all you want. That's not going to change the truth. If you are so emotionally clouded that you cannot hear logic, then that says more about you than it ever will the other people around you. I always laugh when some government official gets insulted by a word. They're not insulted about how many Americans are on welfare, who are going to sleep hungry, who can't find a home, and all the toxins they allow to put in the water and the chemicals in the foods, and how it slowly poisons people and makes them sick, and how they give you medicines that never cure you, but just treat you so they could profit off of you until you die. Where's the outrage from the politicians for that? But, you know, God forbid, or Allah forbid, or Satan forbid, or whatever you worship forbid, you say somebody's name, it's now a racial slur, and you must be a racist if you said it. You know, 10 years ago, if somebody told me they had a crystal ball and explained the world that we live in today, I would wonder how much drugs they were on. And it's becoming a reality. But the beautiful thing is, it doesn't have to be. There is no one path. There is no destiny. You can change anything. Because think about it. Your choice to do something right now means you took one choice out of an infinite amount of choices. You could have decided, I'm going to murder somebody today. Or you could have decided, I'm going to read a book today. Or you could have decided, I was going to go fishing today. Or you could have decided an infinite amount of things. And you can always do them. Some are right, some are wrong. Some will have consequences, some will be inconsequential. But we need to think deeper. And governments love people who are emotionally charged because they're so easy to control. Just imagine if cattle and sheep could think. Do you think they'd line up? And the sheep herders and the cattle ranchers, they'll feed them, they'll protect them, they'll give them shelter, get them all nice and fat so they can line them up and murder them for our consumption. So they'll be kind to you for a long time while they could profit off of you until you're useless. Look at veterans. When you're in the military, you're a hero. They praise you up and down. They'll give you nice shiny medals. But if you lose a limb or you lose your life, yeah, they might give you a nice little folded up flag, but then you're just another person scratched off of their inventory list. Is that who we want to be? I really hope that as a human species, we will start to uplift ourselves instead of the direction we're headed. Because, and that's why I don't worry much, because, there is no world-ending event. There will never be a world-ending event, but it can end lots of people's worlds if they do nothing or do the wrong thing. Evil thrives when good people do nothing. So if people just want to complain all their lives, or people want to insult people all their lives, or people want to just party all their lives, there's always consequences for your actions and inactions. And if people want to get offended by every single word, keep going in that direction and watch. One day something you say will offend somebody else, and your words will be restricted. And you won't like that. And one day, this experiment called democracy, which was once actually a republic, this experiment of trying to do things with many freedoms will have had all of our freedoms taken away. And someday, our generations that aren't born yet are going to look back at this part of history and say, boy, were we stupid. Boy, did we take for granted. Why didn't we stand up for what we had? Because one day we won't have it anymore. So they want you nice and fat. They want you nice and dumb. They want you nice and scared. They want you nice and angry. You ever wonder why that's pretty much the description of most people on this planet? at least partial, if not all, of those descriptions. If you think that's just a coincidence, if you think that's just an accident, if you think that's just a random situation, then congratulations, you're still asleep. But most people listening to videos like this are not those people. So anyway, I don't want to make this video too long because you guys know me. I will talk forever. It's the Italian in me, and if you're Italian, you get insulted. Too bad. So if you want to leave a like, you can. You want to leave a dislike, you can. You want to share it, that's great. If you don't want to share it, that's just as fine. If you want to ignore the direction life is going and just think, oh, I don't want to rock the boat, well, just remember, you're on that boat. So even though you didn't rock it, if that boat sinks, you're going down with it. So you might as well do everything that you can to keep it afloat. So start thinking a little bit deeper. Start seeing the bigger purpose of why things happen and why people are doing what they're doing. Don't just follow the herd. There's a reason why most people are called sheep. And if that insults you, well, nothing I can do about it. So, thank you very much. I can't wait for your comments. Hopefully you'll check out my other videos. Hopefully you'll subscribe. And if you unsubscribe, well, I wish you well and thank you for the time you took listening to what I had to say. Hope you all have a great night and see you later. I'd say see you later, alligator, but I don't want to insult any crocodiles out in the audience.